Back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo standing in this tonight without Joe Resinello, who's doing homework with the kids. But once again, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Tonight, we got a special live show for you tonight because the great thing about social media, as Father Carapi used to say, he goes, the devil uses it for his purposes. We use it for ours, okay? So online, when you're on Twitter, when you're on Facebook, when you're on YouTube, okay, you find that there's a lot of people out there that share your interest that are doing podcasts. So I was fortunate enough on Twitter. I had one of my short videos recently went not viral, but did really, really well talking about something we're going to talk about tonight, which is Dylan Mulvaney. But I was fortunate enough to come across Avoiding Babylon. And Avoiding Babylon, I got Anthony and Rob here from Avoiding Babylon. And basically they're doing what Joe and I are doing. Okay. We're talking church, we're talking politics, we're talking culture. It's all intertwined. We can't really get away from one without talking to, get to one without talking about the other. So it's like, it's a great idea that we introduce ourselves to each other's audience, get to know one another. And, this way we could come together, as a lot of people are calling for Catholics to do in America, especially on social media, to be unified in our front against a lot of the nonsense and the evil that's out there. So Anthony, Rob, welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe, guys.
What's going on, Joe? Joe, where are you from?
Joe and I are both from Newark, New Jersey. About a year and a half ago, I moved out, and right now I'm in Arizona.
Oh, lucky you. I actually visited Arizona last year with my wife. It's one of the most beautiful trips I've ever taken in my life. Yeah.
But you sound like suspended, Anthony.
Yeah, it did. But you sound like you have that New York Italian thing going. So
definitely. I work at a restaurant. People ask me all the time. They're like, "Are you from New York?" I'm like, "I'm from New Jersey. I'm not from New York." But either way. But yeah, so welcome, and I know we're right now we're broadcasting live on your channels also. So welcome to all the viewers of Avoiding Babylon. So listen, let's jump right into it, okay? Because there's a lot going on. Just the analogy I could give you guys is this: Joe and I have said we've been doing this since about 2018. Is that the left basically serves up everything you guys and us need to talk about on a silver platter. It's like a big dish with a big fat ribeye, a big baked potato, and all we got to do is just pick it up and chomp on it because it's an everyday thing. Whether it's Donald Trump and the way they're treating him, whether it's Dylan Mulvaney. Now, here's how I want to start the conversation, because we said it's politics, it's religion, everything else. I'm all in on Trump. Okay, let's start it that way. And I want to preface it, and I love your guys' opinion. I'm not seeing anybody in the Republican, or at least perspective right now, Republicans that are talking like Donald Trump, specifically his speech he gave after the arraignment. Recently, he did a 1-minute clip talking about using pronouns at the federal level and what he's going to do with the Department of Education. And I'm saying to myself, I don't hear DeSantis talking like this. I said on the show a million times, I'm not voting for Nikki Haley. I'm not voting for Mike Pence. I'm writing in Jesus' name on the ballot, if that's the choice I have. Okay. So I'm at least right now, unless some sort of a dramatic change happens, I'm voting for Trump in the primary. I'm going to look forward to voting for him in the general election because I think he's the guy for this moment. I'd love to know what you guys think.
Rob, you want me to take it first? Because
yeah, I can take it first if you want.
Why don't you let me take it first? Because I think I might even swing your opinion, all right? Because I'm going to tell you right now. Here's the thing. I was off the Trump train after he left office. I was just sick of it. I was like, I don't know, man. And then you started seeing DeSantis come up, and I'm like, this guy's saying a lot of good things. And the thing is about DeSantis, he's a great governor. You can't take that from him. DeSantis literally transformed the way the country handled COVID. He ended the COVID policies for the whole country because people couldn't really defy what he was doing. I mean, he went and freed the whole state, took all the restrictions off. The only other one that did it was Kristi Noem, right, in South Dakota. She's the only other one that really didn't put anything in. Yeah. But Trump, the thing about Trump is after his indictment the other day, he comes out and he's like, okay, America's biggest enemy is not Russia. And I thought he was going to say China, but he didn't. He said the deep state. Okay. Now, I was really sick of the whole Trump movement for a little while. And I was getting annoyed with some of the things he was saying. After his speech that night, I found myself back on the Trump train because there's a few things. I think he has to finish his story arc out. Like it just seems abnormal to not let him finish out the story arc.
Your argument is you want to see the end to it?
I want to see how the story ends. That's first off. Second off, I don't think that politics has that. Like Rob has kind of blackpilled me on politics in general, but I do think if Trump is going to go in and actually go after the deep state and actually try, like if he goes in and fires everybody, because I don't think DeSantis will. I think DeSantis is playing a game right now, and I think he's at heart a neocon when it comes to foreign policy. I want this Russia war over, this whole Ukraine nonsense. I want it over. I can't believe it's the Republicans now who are the like no war guys, right? Like you really think back to like after 9/11, like we were so pro Iraq and all this nonsense. Like I'm done with these foreign wars. I want nothing to do with Ukraine. I want to see Trump go in, fix that scenario, and I want to see him gut the State Department. I want to see him gut the CIA. And I want to see, because to me, there's no difference in the deep state and the World Economic Forum. They're all working in unison together. And I think he's the only candidate that would actually take a shot at that.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you because I'm getting a nauseating feeling, and I agree with you on DeSantis. He's been a great governor, all right, and I'll say that. Okay, it seems like he's doing the right thing, but I don't want. He sounds a little bit too much. Let's go to war. Let's keep it up in Ukraine, and I don't want one American dying in Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean,
not one. And that's not heartless, okay? Because Joe and I, we interviewed one of the bishops in the Ukraine, and our heart goes out to the people. They're the victims. They're the victims, okay? But and humanitarian aid, all of that for Ukraine, absolutely. There should be a strong voice like Donald Trump getting them all to sit down and saying, this has got to stop. But that, just digressing for a second. Rob, where are you on Trump?
So for me, who do I think the best president of the United States as it is now would be? Probably DeSantis. But, you know, as a Catholic, the principle we have to follow is we at the very least have to limit the amount of evil done, right? Even if all of our options are bad, we have to go with the option that's least bad. Well, I'm kind of at the point where I think honestly having the whole system torn down to the ground might be the option that is least bad. I mean, we've seen what this two-party system in a liberal democracy has gotten to us up to this point. And it honestly, it only looks like this current system is going to bring us even further worse. Even if it's, you know, so-called Republicans running the show, they're, as everyone says, they're just Democrats 10 years behind. So I guess you could convince me to vote for Trump if having him as president and then someone like DeSantis as a strong governor who maybe would pull Florida out of the union or something similar. I could vote for Trump in that circumstance. But if the election is going to be meaningless as 2020 was, then I think the more you have people just checking out of the system entirely, the more farcical the system begins to seem to everyone. And I think that could dissolve it, and maybe we could come up with something better in the long run. I don't know.
Well, I think that's a great point. Is that, you know, we're kind of on the opinion on this side at the front line with Joe and Joe. And if you're just joining us, we got Anthony, we got Rob from Avoiding Babylon. Please, wherever you're watching this video, like, subscribe, share, follow, do all that fun stuff. Help us spread our message out to a much broader audience. We're of the opinion America. You can make an argument to us that America is finished. The America we grew up in, and we're not old men, okay? Well, I might be a little older, but anyway, but the thing is, the America we grew up in is dead. When you can't have civil debate, we just saw that in the State House in Tennessee, okay? Two representatives led in a mob into the State House in Tennessee, and then they want to cry and moan because they were kicked out of the State House. You know, this is where politics has come. I personally think either America's is finished and we're going to transform into something. Okay. What that is, I don't know. Okay. MTG's out there talking about national divorce. Don't know how feasible that is. Let me throw something out there to you guys. Go ahead, Ant.
I was just going to say, first off, national divorce, if you look at what's going on even in where is it? Over in Europe, the small country that's oh man,
Hungary?
Hungary, right?
There's
so Hungary wants to try to keep their I'm sorry, I'm blanking. But Hungary wants to keep their nation Christian, right? They want to keep their Christian foundations. Look at how much outside pressure they're getting from the rest of Europe, from the UN, from everybody. If you saw America trying to do that and split apart and try to develop that, there's no possible way they're going to allow that. The thing is with Trump, I think that Trump drives the other side so insane that all masks and pretense drops. Like they lose their minds like completely. He wound up escalating the scenario so much faster, and they made them change their game plan up where they probably would have stretched this over 15 years, and they jammed it in under like 2-3 years because they lost their minds. And I think he does that to them. And I think that's the best chance for Rob saying, like, this whole thing does need to come down and something new needs to be built in its place. Trump was framed by his own deep state while he was in office. None of those guys thought he really colluded with Russia. You realize the FBI framed a sitting president. Like, you have to think about, if this guy doesn't come in and fire everyone, nobody will. Like, he's the only person that would actually do that. You still see Republicans playing this game where they think like the same rules apply that did 15 years ago. And it's a totally different world now. Totally different game. Politics is not anything like it was back then.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I keep thinking in my mind that he is the guy for the moment. There are people I would prefer. I'm with you guys, man. My stomach at some point, couldn't take it anymore. Sometimes he tweets and I want to say, Donald, shut up. Stop. Stop. Okay. You don't have to go there. Okay. You don't have to do it. But you want to know something though? I'm starting to question myself because I say to myself, he hits the right buttons. I remember during the primary in 2016, it's like, I'm screaming at the TV, Trump, I'm ready to vote for you, but stop belittling all these guys who guys like me actually like. I kind of like Rand Paul. I like Jeb Bush. I don't have anything against Jeb. Don't like George too much, but I'm all right with Jeb Bush. But you're doing it. But he won the nomination. He's just different. But my larger question is this, Rob, I'll throw it over to you, or either one of you want to, just while we're on Trump. You said that he drives the left crazy. Okay. Obviously he does. I'm still waiting for the left to tell me what positions he's taken that are outside the mainstream. And in some cases, outright stealing the issue from the Democrats, like reforming NAFTA, trade barriers with China, emphasizing worker protections. I mean, I say, what position-wise has he taken that makes them hate him so much? I can't seem to identify it. Can you guys?
I think you're looking for rationale and reason in a people that have completely lost any sense of rationale and reason, right? Like you got to realize, even, I mean, we're going to wind up diving into this. I'm sorry, Rob, I'll let you jump in after, but you're talking about when people lose their identity in God, they lose their sense of reason. I mean, we know, sin darkens the intellect, and you can see that happening. You lose your identity in God and you lose your ability to rationalize and reason, and then all of a sudden you don't know who you are anymore, to the point where you don't know if you identify as a man or a woman. When you lose your identity as a child of God, that's what happens. So I don't think you'll ever find any kind of rationale or reason behind any of the actions on the left anymore.
Yeah, amen to that. Rob,
the modern left is in many ways the exact same as the group, as the Bolsheviks. And it's not about economics. It's not about some economic theory. Marxism, when you get right down to it, is about the denial of reality and the building up of a false reality. That's what happened in Soviet Russia. They threw all the morals out of the windows with the Soviets in the 20s. Abortion was introduced. They tried to actually get rid of marriage in the Soviet Union, but the Russian people were so against that it almost threw the Civil War in the favor of the whites. And that's what we're seeing today. The liberals today saw that for the most part, Marxist economic theory failed, but they saw how effective the denial of objective reality and the building of a completely subjective reality was. And that's what they're doing today. And someone like Trump, I don't think he's going to be the Julius Caesar or like the Augustus that builds the new system that we need. But I think he's the Sulla that destroys what we have now, that causes someone like a Caesar to rise from whatever is left.
I love the analogy to ancient Rome. I mean, and you know what? That sounds very, put it like this, Rob. That sounds very plausible to me. But let me ask you this: I try to be friends with everybody. Okay, obviously you can't be friends with everybody. People I usually come in contact with in my travels. Okay, I'll give you an example, and this is going to lead to a question for both of you guys. So, talking about, let's say, something that would be transformative, in my view, is I have a particular friend who is an atheist libertarian, lapsed Catholic. He grew up Catholic, baptized, everything, walked away from the faith. I pray for him every day that he comes back to the faith. Okay. Now he wants a third party. Okay. I say, yeah, I'm listening to you. My ears are open. Third party. And he wants it to be a libertarian party, states' rights, socially liberal, okay, fiscally conservative. I said, okay, that might sound good. I said, but I want a Roman Catholic third party. I said, that's what I want. And all that means. Traditional Democrats who are socially conservative. Yes, fiscally, we want fiscal conservatism, but the underlying ideas are all informed by the acceptance of, call it logos. You don't have to be a Catholic, but you have to accept moral boundaries, both in economics, in the culture, and that third party would now be a new political force. Am I losing my mind in what I just described to you guys?
Yeah, because do you know how much the shift would have to occur in this country for people to actually get out of a two-party mind state? Like, there would have to be such a shift that it would almost have to be Trump shifting to that third party for people to get. I mean, it's just because I'll be honest, I would rather Dave Smith, who is going to probably be the libertarian candidate, I would probably rather him be president than Trump or anybody else anyway, but it'll never happen. So you really do have to pick the person who you think is going to actually have the most effect. Now, we're all speaking as if we know that this election is going to, I mean, we have to be careful what we say, obviously, but like, I don't see how anybody who saw what happened in 2016 and saw when they said, stop the count. I mean, as soon as they said stop the count at night, I went, that's it. It's a wrap. And I'm just waiting for that to happen in this next one, because this is probably the last election that I mean, depending on how it goes, we'll see.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the feckless Republicans are going to do. You mentioned DeSantis, okay? DeSantis gave the Republicans a model for what you're supposed to do about that issue you just brought up, Anthony. Yeah. That's why. Well, what did we find out? What did we find out because of DeSantis's moves in that regard? Florida is a deep red state.
Now Florida is
Broward, that they told us, conventional wisdom, all the eggheads, all right, on CNN and MSNBC, the smartest people in the room, according to themselves, all right. Broward is blue.
Yeah.
Miami-Dade County is blue. Well, guess what we found out? No, actually, it's not. All right, because dead guys can't vote anymore in Florida. Rob, what do you
clean the voter rolls?
Yeah, right. Clean the voter rolls and basically match signatures, all that stuff. If those things happen, hey, look, I'm in Maricopa County. I witnessed it firsthand. Okay, I don't care what YouTube does to this video. Okay, I witnessed it firsthand at the polling place. The 5 people that were ahead of me, the tabulator wouldn't read their ballot. Read mine. And the person said, well, it's going to go in a third ballot box.
Yeah.
Why can't the tabulator read it? And then all of a sudden people come in and want to throw you out. Rob, what's your view of the third party?
I think Anthony's right. It would need to be a movement kind of like Trump.
Can somebody clip that? Can somebody clip Rob saying, I think
no,
right? No. Please, somebody clip that, because this is a very rare thing that we hear from Rob. Go ahead, Rob. Okay.
Say Trump doesn't win the Republican nomination. I do think he's got the pride, the lack of humility to go third party. If only just to screw over the Republican Party. Is that necessarily a bad thing? I don't really think so, because I think having an actual significant third party to where whoever wins the presidency gets nowhere close to even 50% of the vote, I think that will help usher in something new. is just a serious third party in this country, I think we need to have more than two choices, because right now the choice is just evil and even more evil.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, and not that libertarianism or the Libertarian Party as it is now is good, because I think you're absolutely right, Joe. Libertarianism is good in that it has subsidiarity, where it offers, the chance to get something done on the smallest level possible. But it's only good if then that libertarian smaller units to restrict some of the freedoms they don't want, like gay marriage, something like that.
Sure.
Otherwise, pure unadulterated freedom or license, as libertarians seem to want now, almost as evil. But as I don't know if you're familiar with Kennedy Hall. As Kennedy Hall has said, I'd rather have libertarianism, for all its wrongs, at least they don't have a boot on your throat, and that's an improvement over what we have now.
Yeah.
Well, no, and we can get into that here at the front line with Joe and Joe. I'm being joined by Anthony and Rob from Avoiding Babylon. Guys, if you're wherever you're seeing this broadcast, please help a bunch of brothers out over here. Okay, we're doing our part in the culture war, in the political battles, in the spiritual battle. Okay, help us get our message out to a broader audience. All we're asking you to do: click a like, a subscribe.
Yeah, anybody watching from our channel, subscribe to the front line, and anybody from Frontline, subscribe to Avoiding Babylon. This is we obviously have such an integrated conversation going on. Like we're speaking about the same topics, and people are constantly looking for something good to listen to. So yeah, anybody from our channel, please go and subscribe to them.
Hey, listen, I look at social media this way, okay? I could sit there, not that I do. I could sit there and watch Fox News all day like I used to back when I was younger and stupider, all right? Whereas, okay, if I want to catch Tucker Carlson with Twitter, now Twitter being ostensibly a freer marketplace of ideas, I believe it is. I think we're seeing that because on Twitter, you can talk about things you can't talk about on YouTube, okay? Like elections and vaccines and things like that, okay? But, so I actually forgot what my point was going to be, but I did want to bring this up, just to keep it going on libertarianism for a second. Larry Sharpe, he was running for governor of New York. So Anthony, you're in New York, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with him?
I am. I mean, I never thought he was a serious contender of any kind. I definitely like Lee Zeldin this past election. So.
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing, and I think this is telling, and this speaks to what Rob was just talking about, okay? If you're going to be a libertarian, be consistent. I saw Larry Sharpe in an interview, right? He's talking about, this was post-Roe versus Wade getting overturned, thank God. And he's saying, I know women in New York that are angry. They're angry. And I wanted to jump in the screen and grab him by the lapels and say, Larry, you're making me angry. You're the libertarian. You're the one who's supposed to be into federalism and states' rights. What did the Supreme Court do? They gave it back to the states.
Back to the states, yeah.
Get back to the states. They did what you libertarians, whether you're pro-life libertarian or pro-choice libertarian, okay, they did what you said they're supposed to do on a constitutional level. What do I care if some woman in New York is angry about Roe versus Wade? All right, you're supposed to be the libertarian, and you're kind of taking their side, like the Supreme Court did the wrong thing. So it makes me, put it like this, a little skeptical of the libertarians, because in as much as there would be a libertarian third party, they're going to have a lot of internal conversations that's going to have to go on amongst themselves, because they're not all monolithic either.
No, they're definitely not.
There's a lot of pro-life libertarians.
So, well, even talking about, I mentioned Dave Smith before. He's probably going to be the libertarian candidate for president. He was on the other day. He was on Tim Pool's show the other day, and he actually spoke about abortion being the foundation for the leftist ideals. Like, if you take abortion away, you'll see all of this, like the whole promiscuous sex thing disappear. You'll see the whole what gender am I thing disappear, because when women get pregnant from having sex, like, you see immediately that men are men and women are women, and there's nothing you can do about that. And it's he didn't go far enough, because really, if you go back, really birth control was the advent of the demise of it. Because once you separate sex from procreation, that's when you start to get, I mean, from the advent of the abortion pill, you could have seen from back then this craziness that we're seeing now, if you just had eyes to see. Because once you separate sex from procreation, it's well, if even if a husband and wife can have birth control. That means they can use sex just for recreation. Why can't the couple that's not married just use it for that? And if they can use it just for that, well, why can't two men use it for that? And two men can use it for that. What's the difference in a man and a woman if two men are together or two women together? And you could really see it's a logical progression. As much as we say they've lost all logic and reason, it's the logical progression of a society that doesn't hold chastity as its foundation. And when you lose Christianity as your cult, as a common cultural, religion, and even though it wasn't always a Catholic nation or a very specific Protestant like the Church of England has in England, when you don't have a common cult to unite a people, all of a sudden you start seeing things going haywire. Now, how do you have anything hold this nation together when you're up against people who literally think it's okay to castrate children? Like, how do you build anything that's going to stay cohesive in a scenario like that?
Well, let me ask you this, Rob, just to bring you in for a second. That problem I see as a matter of political will. That the Republicans, who, like you said, they're just liberals, just two steps beyond, a couple steps behind. All right, they just go liberal light. Why are so-called conservative Republicans even given this crap time of day? Okay, rather than saying no. Joe and I say on the show all the time, the answer has to be from guys like us and the people that we elect. No. Well, let's have a debate. No. There's no that. Well, a man can. No, that's it. No. You're children. You're like 5-year-old children who need to be spanked and told no. Okay. Men can't be women. You can't make an argument. Shut up. Rob, I love your thoughts on that.
So, I mean, this all really goes back to the invention of nominalism back in the late medieval period that led to the Protestant Revolution. It's the whole idea that these universals, these universal truths and concepts, these Platonic forms aren't real in themselves, and they're just words, they're just names, they're just random concepts. And once you get away with that, once you buy into nominalism, suddenly all that matters is power, is your will. It's voluntarism, and that's the sin of Satan right there. That your will is what gives you power. And Republicans, they've bought into this idea that all that matters is that they win elections and have power. And then once they get that, they're so afraid of losing it, because that's all that matters in modern politics is power. They're so afraid of losing the power that they don't do anything with the authority they gain in an election, because they're so scared of losing it. So then you do just get them to be, sitting lame ducks, trying to win elections instead of trying to push the needle back towards good.
It's great. You don't ever see a Republican say repeal like anything, right? Like, you'll never see a Republican come in and say like, repeal these stupid assault rifle bans that the Democrats put in. You'll never.
The only recent example we have is in the Dobbs decision, when I forget if it was Thomas or who was it? One of the justices mentioned that Obergefell, might need to be looked at again. That is the only time in my living memory, I'm 34. That's the only time in my living memory I've ever seen a so-called conservative here in America suggest that we actually push the needle back the other way instead of just slowing it down.
Well, I'll tell you what, if libertarians really valued, and a lot of them do, let's be fair to them. Okay. If they really valued federalism, or you as appropriately as you guys said it, subsidiarity. All right. Which is the Catholic, the Catholic way of putting federalism. Okay. I think our founding fathers knew something about Catholic teaching in that regard. Okay. And they put it in the Constitution. If they really cared about that, then they should be supporting Donald Trump, because I make the argument that the importance of Roe versus Wade is that it's a setback for the abortion industry, for the forces of evil. On that level, absolutely. Okay. The other part of it, from every American's point of view who considers themselves constitutionalist, is that the Supreme Court, as Rob just mentioned, the Supreme Court signaled that they're willing to come out of the culture war. They came into it in school prayer in the 1950s. And with this Supreme Court, okay, with these justices, minus Roberts, okay, because he's what we call here at the show disgraziad, okay, because he's proven himself to be. They're signaling with the abortion, with the Jackson decision, that they're willing, If the cases come their way, they're willing to back out of the culture war and send these things back to the states. Libertarians and conservatives should be applauding this. They should be supporting this. And most importantly, they should be thanking Donald Trump. Because here's the thing I will say about Trump, okay? I think any other Republicans that we know of that we probably have voted for in our lives, McCain, Romney, going back to W, I don't think they would have stood by Brett Kavanaugh. Trump did. Trump did. And I think that part of the Supreme Court, aside from what it means for us as Catholics to have Roe versus Wade overturned, was that very idea of starting to take the power away from the federal government and put it back where it belongs, which is with the states. Your thoughts on that, guys?
Well, I would say even going back to what you just said about the Supreme Court, right? Like they stepped into the culture war but with the prayer in schools thing, right? Now, so prayer was removed from schools, but what got brought in? You had pride flags brought in now, right? Like you look at what every one of these teachers are doing, right? So they took the Christian religion out and they're putting this new religion in, and they're indoctrinating our children there. So it's like they'll step out of the culture war if it has to do with traditional values, but they'll shut their mouths when it comes to this new thing because everybody's afraid. Like you were saying, with the Republicans, why are they so afraid? Even Lindsey Graham will get up and he'll stand next to Trump and say rah rah Trump, and then behind his back he's voting for everything he can against what Trump was doing, because Trump, look, like it or not, the man's a narcissist, right? Like he is. Like if you go over and say something nice about him, he doesn't care about anything else. He just cares that you're his friend. But I think that he's such a narcissist that I think he wants to go down as the greatest president in history. Like that's really my view on Trump. He wants to go down as the greatest president in history, and he's willing to do things that nobody else will. The Republicans, like if you really look at how they before gay marriage was passed, they were all standing up and saying they want to. As soon as it got passed, not a single Republican even brings that up anymore. It's worse than just going. It's like, what do they say? Republicans or Democrats going the speed limit or something. It's worse than that. It's almost like they really don't want anything to do with these culture wars at all, because none of them want to be focused in on by the mainstream media. They're all terrified of them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand that at all. My view is that, and again, I don't know how to do it. I mean, sometimes I think, all right, okay, we're going to have to get new leadership at the Republican Party. And what happens? Ronna McDaniel overwhelmingly gets reelected. What happens immediately after that? Wisconsin Supreme Court goes left. I mean, it's like guys like us, you say, well, then what are we going to do? Well, at the very least, I want to have influence in my state. Okay. I'm in a red state. I'm not in a purple state here in Arizona. This state's red. Don't care what the last election said. Okay. Don't care.
Well, you guys got robbed of your governor.
Robbed. Outright theft. And I don't care what
Absolutely.
YouTube has to say. Okay. And that woman, Carrie Lake, God bless her, she's fighting that to the Supreme Court. And again, she's got stones, whether she wins or not. She's got stones to say, no, I'm not backing down on this. Telling that, by the way, to all the Republicans, too, who want her to back down. But my larger point is, I'm going to fight on a local level. Let's move the conversation a little bit further. Guys, you got to help me out with this, okay? Well, let me ask your opinion. Do boycotts work? In your view, if you had a really effective, I mean, if you ask Bill Donahue at the Catholic League, he'll tell you they do, because he's had success with that, okay? But I'm asking you guys, do you think they work? Because a lot of conservatives say, no, we shouldn't boycott. I want to start the conversation there.
I think they do if you could actually get people together to do. Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry. I always jump in first.
I was just going to say it depends on if the goal of that company is actually to make money. And I'm starting to think a lot of the people in charge of these companies don't so much care about that anymore. Not for the company itself.
Well, let me ask you this, Rob. What are they supposed to care about? I mean, again, I did a video earlier, and let's open it up, okay? What the hell is Bud Light thinking? What's Anheuser-Busch thinking?
Well, I think here's what you have to really think about. So the Bud Light thing, the backlash they're getting, I think they're like, oh crap, what did we step in? Like, I really do. I think their sales are in the gutter. They haven't said a word on Twitter or anything since this whole thing happened. I really think they stepped in a little too deep this time. And I think what they were thinking is, let's put a millennial woman in charge of our ad division. And when you put a millennial woman in charge of advertising, I mean, there's a video of this woman going around talking about, well, we just really wanted to appeal to a younger generation. So you're talking about appealing to Gen Z, who's what, 26 and younger. So you're going to appeal to this group that's 5 years they're allowed to drink, right? There's a 5-year, as opposed to every man in construction in the United States, who there really is their core buyer, right? Like that's their core consumer. You would think it's just your average middle-class American guy that's out, driving a dump truck. He comes home and he has a Bud Light afterward. It's like when you put women in these positions, it's going to backfire in your face. You can't
Here's the problem, Anthony. That middle class, male construction worker, they're like the Russian serf who did nothing during the Russian Civil War, whereas your Gen Z, average Gen Z kid, they're the Red Guard who will tear down physically the companies that don't buy into their propaganda, and those companies will be all that's left standing after this revolution. So I think companies like Anheuser-Busch, they get a sense of what's coming, and they want to be that one or two companies in that market that is allowed to still be in that market after all is.
But the irony is everybody's jumping in, grabbing Coors Light, as if Coors Light doesn't have a rainbow Coors Light can every June. I mean, every one of these companies, they cannot wait to pinch their incense to Caesar, because that's what this is. Let's not kid about it. I mean, what we're talking about is they're going around and they want their pinch of incense, and anybody that doesn't give it, they're going to come after you. They're going to cancel you. They're going to punish you. But they're all just trying to one up each other in this whole diversity, equity, inclusion thing. And the way you do it is to just deny reality with this whole trans thing. Like that's the next thing that everybody has to be in on. It's not enough to have a rainbow flag. You need to be as disgusting and perverse as you possibly can now. And they're all just trying to beat each other to it.
Right. It's not enough. It's the same thing with the race question. When you look at people like Ibram Kendi and guys like that who say, no, you can't just say you're not racist. You have to be anti-racist. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, all that means is that you're saying that I got to vote Democrat. If I want to prove my anti-racism, you're telling me that I got to vote for your BS policies.
Well, just think about what you're saying there, right? Like what you're saying is, look, this is never about race. Nobody, I don't think in modern America, I mean, look, of course you're going to get that lunatic white supremacist. They do exist, I guess. But for the most part, people don't actually dislike people for the color of their skin. People dislike people because they disagree with them. And you see that with the left when you have a black person comes out on the conservative angle, they will call him an Uncle Tom. They will destroy that person. They will ridicule him to no end. And same thing on our side. It's like, I don't care what color your skin is. I care what your ideas are, because some of the ideas on the left are going to destroy this country. It's like that you see the things that they're laying out, and it is. We started the show off talking about, we think America is unraveling, and we're seeing the collapse of an empire. I mean, if you look, we've talked about, like Camille Paglia talks about how when you look at the end of the Roman Empire, all the statues are androgynous. There's this obsession with gender at the end of every major civilization before they crumble. We don't know why. It's just something that happens. It's like almost like people are so overburdened with like extravagance, and they have just they're so well off that they have nothing better to do than just find nonsense to be upset about, and I really just think that's where we're coming. We're just coming to the end of something. I don't know what that means, but I haven't seen the end of it.
I mean, yeah, like you said, I sometimes I don't know how to describe it. I get frustrated. I get hopeful on the one hand, right? But then I get very frustrated because, again, we're talking about Republicans, all right? And we know what they're all about. Evidently, I mean, I'll put it like this to you. Does all of this extend as far as government action is concerned, even on a local law enforcement level? Riley Gaines got punched in the face the other night at San Francisco State University. If the person who punched her in the face doesn't get prosecuted, that person should be removed from office. Okay. However, that has to happen because they're not fulfilling their oath that I'm sure they took on some sort of a pagan book. They probably didn't do it on a Bible. Okay. But nonetheless, they took an oath of office to uphold the law. And Riley Gaines could get punched in the face by somebody who's protesting her right to speak freely. Where is the defunding of San Francisco State University? Where is law enforcement in the state of California telling that DA there, you need to prosecute that person? We had the
It's
person
so
on
much.
tape.
It's so much worse than that. Look at the guy, the Uber driver who drove accidentally into the Black Lives Matter parade. Somebody pulls an AK on him and he shoots because he thought he was going to get shot. The guy gets charged with murder. You look
In
to
Texas.
the BLM in Texas, in Austin. This isn't, I mean, Austin's very liberal, but still it's in Texas. That has stand your ground laws. This isn't, you're not talking about New York or New Jersey where it's like you have a duty to flee or something like that. You're talking about Texas where some of the greatest stand your ground laws in the country. And this guy thought he was going to get shot, fired in self-defense, and they charged him with murder and he got convicted. Then you look at when these BLM riots were going on, they marched into a neighborhood and they were protesting outside the guy's house. The guy pops a gun up in the window just to let them know, if you come in my house, something's going to happen. The cops come in and they arrest the homeowner, not the people protesting outside who are throwing bottles at his house. You guys have to realize if there really does come a time for a civil war in this country, people think, oh, the right has all the guns. The right has all. You're not getting how powerful the media itself is. The media and the information arm that they control is so incredibly powerful that you think you're just going to be able to defend yourself. You will be convicted even when you're in the right. They run the courts. They run all the institutions that have power. I don't even know where this goes from here. Like I understand that the right is the ones who are the Second Amendment guys and they love that, they love their guns and stuff. I don't think we'll even get the opportunity to get to there. I don't think it'll come to that. I think they will put us in internment camps. Like I really do.
Rob, your thoughts?
If things continue kind of at
Rob, you there?
The slow. Yeah, can you guys see me at all?
Yeah, no, we got you now, Rob.
Hello? Okay. I was going to say, if things kind of continue at the slow deteriorating pace they are now, Anthony's going to want to record this too, but Anthony's probably right that we might not get the chance to do anything about it. But if thing accelerates it, then maybe we'll be able to react. But I think we can't fool ourselves in thinking that these traditional conservative bastions of like the police and of the military will side. I think we have to that the police and the military are literally the enforcement arms of the government, and the government's been against us for a very long time, unfortunately, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, unfortunately. So.
Yeah, and that's a shame of it because you think sometimes I've always had the impression of cops that cops generally speaking tend to be more conservative. They're law and order type people. I mean, that's their profession. I'll tell you guys a great story. I remember when BLM was trying to tear down every Columbus statue there was. So they made the stupid mistake of trying to do that in Nutley, New Jersey. Now, I grew up in Newark, so I'm 2 towns over from Nutley. A lot of Italians in Nutley,
Yeah.
lots of Irish too. You got a lot of Irish there, and all Catholic. And they have a bust of Columbus in front of, I believe it's their library or their town hall. Anyway, Franklin Avenue goes from changes names a couple times, but goes from downtown Newark right up to Nutley through Belleville and Nutley. And here comes BLM, right? They're going to march up there. They're going to take down that statue of Columbus. You know what they met? They met a few hundred guys that look like me, okay? Now 50 years old with their bellies out. Who knows? Maybe they were drinking Bud Light, all right? And the cops in the middle, all right? Real cops, okay? Nutley cops, okay? No violence at all. These guys very simply said, you're not touching that statue. Might as well turn around and go back to Newark. You're not. And the little black girl screaming into the megaphone, you're racist! You're racist! They're like, you're not touching the statue. You might as well go home. And in a short period of time, in less than an hour, they marched right back down Franklin Avenue.
Do you remember the Sopranos episode? Did you watch the Sopranos? The Sopranos episode when they were marching against the Columbus parade. Such a classic episode. Tony's like, the man's a hero.
Yeah, Tony Soprano had the best line in that when he said to Silvio, who's complaining about the Columbus statues, he's like, what the hell are you talking about? What do you care about Columbus statues? Basically saying, we're gangsters. We don't care about that kind of stuff. But that's what you run into. You run into people that say, listen, not in my neighborhood. You're not going to get away with it. Maybe you can get away with it at a college campus. You think you're going to punch Mike Knowles in the face. You think you're going to punch this one. They're all about punching. All the peaceful, tolerant people. They're all about punching. And I'm glad Rob brought up, in other words, obviously, the Bolshevik Revolution. Okay, I said this about Dylan Mulvaney. All right, and we'll carry on the conversation and we'll finish with this guy. Okay, he is a violent Marxist revolutionary, and we do not use the word Marxist loosely. Okay, we know what we're talking about, because as Rob alluded to earlier, Marxism is not an economic theory. It is a worldview, primary, central to which is the rejection of God and objective truth, as Rob mentioned. Okay, now you got this guy, and everybody's saying we're just supposed to love him. Yeah. All right, he tells women, we love you, but I'm fearful for you because we're gonna remember who you are if you don't say the right thing online. Now, to me, that's a threat. I think you guys saw the video. I posted it, right? Of all people, you want to hear what's funny? Caitlyn Jenner actually retweeted it, agreeing with me.
She's a walking contradiction. I said she. He's a walking contradiction.
You did. Right.
Caitlyn Jenner is a walking contradiction, because I think there's so much self-loathing there. It's like he sees what is going on, and he's like, oh, good for you. You stood up for yourself. It's like, you idiot. Nobody has done more for the trans movement than Caitlyn Jenner. That was the turning point. It was like, I remember Bill Burr was on with like Conan O'Brien, and it was right after, Bruce Jenner becomes Caitlyn Jenner, and Bill Burr was like, you guys are getting mad at me for not using, calling her a she. He's like, it's been 15 minutes. Can I have a second here? Like, I haven't adjusted yet here. It's like, but Caitlyn Jenner was the turning point. And from that point on, it was like, it was trans everything. That was the coming out party, basically. Right. It was like, we went from gay marriage to this trans avalanche. So like, gay marriage took from like, I think when we had Tim Gordon on our show, we talked about that. It was like, you remember in like 1996, Seinfeld had that episode when they were talking about like, George getting the massage and it moves, and he's like, I think it moved. He's like, well, that means you're gay. He's like, well, not that there's anything wrong with that. That was in 96, right? It's like, not that there's anything wrong with that. We go from that to gay marriage was what, 20 years? 96. Yeah, it was 20 years before gay marriage comes. Yeah. And then in 3 years, it's like, if you don't use the right pronouns, you're going to jail. It's like, that's really how quickly this is happening. It's crazy.
Well, the thing is this too about Caitlyn Jenner is like, and I agree with you 1,000%. Which is it going to be? What side is it going to be? Okay. Because, I was appreciative that he shared the tweet. I mean, just from a click point of view. Okay?
Yeah. Just from
that's great. He's got 3.4 million people that follow him. Okay.
Yeah.
But you want to say to him too, like, dude, listen, you started all this. Did you not see this was going to be the inevitable consequence? If you think that you're a woman, okay, then what's to stop these younger men like Leah Thomas, all right, who pretends to be a woman, from saying to the to the sports organization, I'm going to swim with the girls because I feel female today. All right.
Yeah.
Caitlyn Jenner started all this, as you said. You can't condemn them now. You're not in the moral position to condemn them because they're following through on the logical consequence of what you started. Is really what it comes down to. And now you get Dylan Mulvaney that if you say anything about him, they'll take you out in the middle of Times Square and bring the guillotine back and chop your head off. We'll go back to the days of the French Revolution. I mean, this is really what it is.
What I will say about the trans thing is that it's providing an opportunity for us also, though, because where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. And there's something so off about this movement that people are keenly aware, even though they're afraid to speak out, they know intuitively, like, this is evil. Like, there's something really evil going on, that they're trying to do this to children. Like, even the most liberal of liberals, like, unless you're a part of the cult, like, that side, the cult, there's something that intuitively, like, that this is something really off and that they're doing this to children. And even when I saw my in-laws at Easter, like, I used that as a platform to even evangelize them and say, look, if you don't give your children the Christian faith, that's the faith that's coming to get them. That's the faith that's evangelizing them. So I was talking to my brother-in-law about it. I said, Tim, if you don't give your children a good Christian foundation, the cult is coming, and don't think your kids won't fall for it, because unless they have a solid moral and intellectual tradition to fall back on where you could say, okay, well, this is why things are the way they are. This is why, like, unless they really understand the story of Christianity and why we believe it and that there's so much reason and rationale behind it, they're going to get swallowed up by the culture. They'll get swallowed up by worldliness. They'll get caught up watching pornography. And then once really pornography is the stepping stone to all of this, because people know they do devious things in private and they're looking at crap they shouldn't. So they don't want to judge other people. So they kind of keep their mouths shut because nobody wants to be a hypocrite. So you don't want to judge anyone. And that's really the stepping stone that set everything off back in, Hugh Hefner, you could really bring this back to.
No, go ahead. Rob, your thoughts.
I think what we see is not just a loss of God. Obviously, that's probably the biggest issue, but it's also just a loss of classical like philosophy and the ability to think and use logic. We kind of see it in the own Benjamin tweet from the other day, making fun of Catholics, comparing our doctrine of transubstantiation to trans ideology. People don't know what substance is. They don't know what essence is. They don't understand form and matter and accidents and all these things that people 1,000 years ago understood. I mean, we think we're so much smarter and more intelligent than people 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and yet St. Thomas Aquinas in 1100 would whip any astrophysicist up and down, just with basic logic today. It wouldn't even be close. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that stupid space wizard, would have no chance.
I tell you what, we interviewed Father Spitzer, and I happened to throw in, I said, Father, I says, that Neil deGrasse Tyson, he is an arrogant guy. Father Spitzer, who's one of the nicest guys, he says, yeah, I agree with you on that.
He's just so anti-Catholic. He has such an anti-Catholic bias that everything that comes out of his mouth, if he could find a way to make it like the church was foolish in any area of science, he takes a crack at it. We played a video one time of him trying to say that Joan of Arc was burned at the stake because she wore men's clothes and she was the first transgender person. I mean, he's such a moron. It's like you could see him really, like, for a guy who's supposed to be a scientist and base things in reality and the scientific method, it's like the people who are supposed to be scientists are the same people telling you that carbon dioxide is heating the planet. They're the same people that tell you life doesn't begin at conception. They're the same people that tell you that a man can become a woman just by putting on a dress. They're the same people. Think about and they're the people that are telling us that evolution is true. Right. It's like, you think I'm going to believe anything? Once you lie to me once or twice, I don't believe anything you have to say anymore at that point.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just gonna say, listen to what Neil deGrasse Tyson said this within the last week. He said he doesn't care about the opinion of a scientist. I think he was talking specifically about COVID. All he cares about is the scientific consensus. And at first glance, your average person hears that and they think, oh yeah, that makes sense. But all that really is the democratization of science. It's saying whatever 50% plus one scientist thinks is right, where science is supposed to be the search for absolute objective truth. And yet you have all our scientific experts today saying they don't care about objective truth. They care about what they can get all the scientists to agree to. Well, that tells you that science isn't science, and it hasn't been ever since people started funding it, with people with agendas.
Right. And that's the thing. A lot of times, like when I'm talking to people, let's say, for example, just take evolution for as an example, or what they call climate science. I say, I don't believe either one. And they say, well, what's your proof? I said, because I see an agenda. I don't have the proof. I'm not a scientist, but I know that there's an agenda. Now, we as Catholics certainly know that obviously, when they make Carl Sagan their hero, because Carl Sagan is the one who said, we're nothing. He popularized it. We're nothing. Our planet is on a remote corner in a meaningless spot in the universe, because you can't attack Catholicism while still allowing people to believe that there's something inherently special about human beings. Evolution says you're not special. And they promote it as though it's a fact. And I say, listen, I don't believe it. Why? Because you guys got an agenda. Same thing.
How about this? How can it's like they say it's like the survival of the fittest, right? So it's like the genes that are the strongest are the ones that are going to go on. But like, how can nature select? If you're starting with a single-celled organism, how can an eye develop if there's no eye for the gene to choose? It just doesn't make sense. Like, I could see adaptation happening, right? That's like a microevolution. You'll see that. You see, like when they allowed like pigs to roam in Texas when they first, wild boar, they developed tusks and things like that. You'll see microevolution, but to see like species jumping from a frog to a bird, it's just preposterous. Come on, stop it.
Well, that's a distinction that a lot of people need to make in the face of the Sam Harrises of the world, the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world, is to say, look, you guys, you want to. I think I've heard it called speciation as opposed to evolution. Yeah. A dog's going to stay a dog. Yeah, but the dogs nowadays don't look like they did. Yeah, but that dog 3,000 years ago was still a dog.
Yeah.
That one here that you're looking at right now is still a dog. Yeah. And that dog or this dog ain't going to evolve into me or Anthony or Rob.
Exactly. And that's what it is. You'll never see some species jump, right? So I don't care if we, over 1 million years, a species could maybe evolve to have some different traits, things like that. But you wouldn't get this wide array of life to start from nothing. How can something come from nothing? It's just silly. Come on. And it really.
Well, if you think about it, the transgenderism is a natural progression from evolution, because evolution is like you said, a dog will remain a dog. It might be a good dog, it might be a bad dog with 3 legs instead of 4 legs, whatever, but a dog is a dog. But when something becomes something else, you're saying that its substance, its very essence changed. Of course, as Catholics, we believe that only happens in the miracle of transubstantiation, but in evolution, for the essence of something to change from one thing to another, well, that's what they're saying happens with transgender, except, of course, as we know, the substance isn't changing. A man is a man. They're just changing the outside accidents. They're, cutting things off and adding things. Well, but at substance, it is what it is.
The transgender thing is a mockery of transubstantiation, because they change the appearance and claim the substance changes, where we say the substance changes but the appearance stays the same. It really is an inverse mockery.
It's a demonic inversion.
And I think my son actually pointed that out to me when he was like 14 or 15. I was like, what an insightful observation. I couldn't believe it.
That's great, guys. We're gonna have to leave it there for tonight. I want to express my gratitude for you guys.
Joe, this was a blast, man.
Yeah, so I can report back to Joe Rossinello. Hey, buddy, we got 2 more friends out there.
Absolutely.
And hey, if we can, we'll work it out. Let's try to make it like maybe a once every month and a half thing. We'll pick a topic. Sure. We'll shred some atheists. We'll have a great time. I mean, that's what it's all about, right?
Honestly, really grateful that you even reached out to us, Joe. Thank you so much, man. We had a great time.
Awesome.
It was something very different. We usually try to, like, our typical shows are like, we go through like some goofy videos and then we'll pick one serious topic to go over. Sometimes we do interviews, things like that. But anybody that's watching from our stream, please subscribe to Frontline with Joe and Joe, because you guys are part of a larger network, right?
Our producer originally started out with Frontline with Joe and Joe, just to briefly tell you, and then on YouTube he switched over to more of a TV type thing with Joe and Joe as the center. So it's the Frontline TV, and he's got some other personalities on there like Joe McClain, and Father Stephen Imbarado, Mother Miriam. Like, he brought.
Yeah. I was looking through your channel. I saw a bunch of your stuff.
So, but Joe and Joe is pretty much the central show, and then everything else around it there. And then Twitter is pretty much purely Frontline with Joe and Joe. Facebook is a little bit more like the YouTube. We're just trying to pump it out there. Yeah, but it's Frontline TV. I'll tell everybody out there, Frontline TV on YouTube, Avoiding Babylon on YouTube, and on Twitter, it's Avoid Babylon on Twitter, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think somebody else grabbed Avoiding Babylon on Twitter.
All right, you got to steal it back from them.
I tried. I think it was somebody was messing with us, and they took it as soon as we started the channel. Like, they didn't like us, and they stole the name just to.
No, don't say us. It was like you. I'm messing with you.
All right, but everybody in our audience, same thing. Avoiding Babylon, Avoid Babylon, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. Like, subscribe, share if you haven't already. Do all that fun stuff. Thank you very much for joining us here for this great conversation. We're going to have more in the future, and perhaps have on some guests when we do. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Joe.